I remember the day the scent of sizzling garlic and rosemary mingled with unspoken promises. It was a typical late autumn afternoon in a quiet suburban neighborhood in the heart of the USA, one where perfectly trimmed lawns hid secrets behind each picket fence. In a modest yet lovingly cared-for home, nestled on a cul-de-sac, lived a man named Thomas Carlyle, the homeowner whose life had always seemed to mirror order and routine. His presence was calm, almost predictable, a steady figure in his well-maintained life. But as fate would have it, beneath this placid exterior lay a tempest of passion and betrayal waiting to unfold. Thomas had been married for 15 years to Michelle Carlyle, a strong, independent woman known for her striking intelligence and determination. Despite her professional success and long hours at a high-powered corporate job, Michelle carried a quiet sadness as she returned to a home that had grown eerily silent in her absence. Their marriage, once vibrant with shared dreams and heartfelt laughter, had slowly become routine, a calculated exchange of greetings punctuated by long stretches of silence. Michelle's dedication to her work was admired by many, but at home she felt the void of warmth that had gradually withered away. The accident of time had left each of them stepping into roles that were as well-practiced as they were unsatisfying. Into this picture stepped Isabella Marlowe, a masterful cook whose talents transcended the simple art of meal preparation. Isabella was known in the neighborhood for her culinary prowess, her ability to transform simple ingredients into feasts that awaken the soul. Employed at a prestigious gourmet bistro on the corner of town for years, she possessed a gift that went beyond flavors. Her life had been a series of dreams enacted in the kitchen, a canvas of emotions painted with the bold strokes of spice and passion. But unbeknownst to anyone, Isabella had recently transitioned into a new chapter of her life when she accepted a position in Thomas's home. It seemed too fortunate to be true, a merger of fate and timing. Thomas, who had long been discreet about his preference for elegance, soon invited her into his home as a personal chef, a position that offered not only the promise of delectable meals, but also the allure of sharing personal stories and hidden confidences in the solace of his elegant kitchen. At first, it was just culinary mastery that charmed Thomas. Isabella's gentle, melodious laugh and comforting presence in the kitchen reminded him of times when he felt truly alive. Each evening she emerged from the gleaming stainless steel sanctuary, her hands slightly dusted with flour and a glint of mischievous warmth in her eyes, as though she carried a secret that vibrated with each gesture. The aroma of simmering sauces and freshly baked bread became the soundtrack of an emerging connection. Thomas, who had thought himself immune to the most dangerous of all human impulses, began to question the boundaries of loyalty. As Isabella prepared meals that caressed his senses, the lines between professional courtesy and hidden desire blurred into a panorama of emotions. In those quiet, languid evenings, as soft jazz played in the background and the windows framed a dusky skyline, Thomas found his defenses crumbling. Isabella, with a grace that made every touch a tender assurance, turned his familiar house into a palace of forbidden delights. Their secret meetings in the kitchen became a ritual, a slow dance of whispered confidences, with every shared taste of her dishes marking the passage of time into something irretrievably changed. Their interactions were subtle at first, a lingering smile, an accidental brush of fingertips, but soon evolved into a clandestine liaison that defied the natural order of their lives. It began on an ordinary Tuesday when Isabella was preparing her signature dish, a slow-simmered stew that seemed to embody the very essence of her soul. The kitchen, with its polished surfaces and neatly arranged utensils, became a stage for the unfolding drama. Thomas entered the room after a long day at the office, weary yet unexpectedly invigorated by the aroma. He leaned casually against the doorframe, watching Isabella as if the allure of her presence was the remedy for years of routine monotony. Their eyes met, and in that quiet moment, an unspoken invitation was passed between them, a promise of warmth in the depth of the twilight. The intimacy that followed was not born out of physical necessity. but out of a yearning for a connection that had been long overdue. Yet, in every tale of passion, there always exists a counterbalance, a fate that hovers just beyond the horizon. Across town, Michelle Carlyle, ever the diligent professional, began to sense that something was amiss. The absence of warmth at home was no longer a trivial detail in her busy life. It grew into an unsettling realization. Michelle was a woman who prided herself on perception and clarity. As the days went by, subtle clues, the missed calls, the hushed conversations in empty hallways, and the innocuous smells reminiscent of exotic spices began to stack up into an undeniable pattern. Her long nights at the office, once a source of pride and accomplishment, now took on an undercurrent of betrayal. Michelle, who had long believed that she knew every nuance of her husband's character, was forced to confront the possibility that she was living in a house woven with secrets. One evening, as Michelle returned home unexpectedly early, the house was curiously silent. The corridors that usually echoed with the familiar clink of silverware and soft murmurs of conversation were vacant. Drawn by a mixture of trepidation and hope, she stepped cautiously toward the spacious kitchen, a room that had, until that very moment, been merely a backdrop for quiet evenings and occasional laughter. Yet tonight, the kitchen bore an aura of abandonment, as if time itself had paused to reveal a hidden truth. In the dim light, she noticed a scarf draped over the back of a chair, the fabric still warm as if it had recently absorbed the heat of passion. The unmistakable aroma of Isabella's stew lingered in the air, mingling with the lingering traces of an illicit history. Michelle's heart pounded with a mix of fury and sorrow. The emotions cascading within her were as unpredictable as the flames beneath a simmering pot. Every detail, the muted glow of the overhead light, the soft clatter of pans, the faint trace of an unfamiliar perfume, sowed the seeds of betrayal. Michelle's mind raced with questions. How could her perfect world fracture so subtly and completely? Was the veneer of domestic bliss all that was real, or was it merely a carefully constructed mask, hiding a reservoir of deceptions? The revelation struck her with the subtle force of a whispered secret, and in that charged moment, determination replaced the shattering of trust. Michelle's pain transformed into an unyielding resolve, a promise of retribution that burned brighter than any candle in the dim kitchen. In the days that followed, Michelle embarked on a silent crusade. Her public facade remained that of a composed, successful woman, but behind closed doors, a fervor for revenge was taking root. Instead of a collision marked by violent outbursts, her retaliation was measured and calculated, a slow dismantling of the treacherous network of lies. Michelle started gathering pieces of a puzzle that had been laid out in cryptic signs and half-whispered conversations. Every phone call, every out-of-place receipt, every note that seemed to hint at secret rendezvous was stored away like a fragment of a dark mosaic. She learned to mimic nonchalance while secretly mapping out every crossing of paths between Thomas and Isabella. Late nights found her poring over calendars, emails, and even photographs that had inadvertently surfaced through family archives. The evidence, when carefully assembled, spoke a silent truth, a betrayal that cut through the fabric of her existence. For Thomas, the ensuing weeks took on the flavor of bittersweet indulgence. His internal conflict deepened as he juggled the intoxicating pull of forbidden romance with the creeping guilt of betraying a woman who had been his partner in life. There was an irony to the situation, one that he both recognized and denied. He had always regarded love as an affair of the heart, yet here he was caught in a web of duplicity that threatened to unravel everything he had built. His interactions with Isabella took on a new complexity. The once subtle touches in the kitchen grew bolder, their stolen moments more urgent. In the midst of simmering sauces and the crackle of embers beneath the stove, every morsel of shared laughter was laced with the knowledge of what they risked. Their conversations danced around the inevitability of discovery, even as both sought refuge in the solace of shared secrets. Isabella, too, was not immune to the overarching current of destiny. She had always viewed her culinary talent as a means to heal hearts and transform souls. Yet, as her connection with Thomas deepened, she too became a prisoner of circumstance. Her eyes, usually lit with the joy of creating savory wonders, now held an unspoken sorrow as they bore witness to the duality of her existence. Each stir of the pot echoed the rhythm of her conflicted heart, a heart that knew the thrill of illicit romance and the burden of deceit. In every carefully chosen spice, she veiled her inner turmoil, and in every finished dish, she masked the scars of a past filled with unfulfilled promises. The kitchen, once her sanctuary of pure creation, had become a stage for a drama that blended the lines between romance and treachery. As days passed, the tension in the household became nearly palpable, a sizzling heat that rivaled the flames on the stove. Mornings would greet Thomas with a reluctant farewell as he hurried off to work, leaving Michelle in a silent house heavy with unsaid words. Evenings arrived with the anticipation of shared meals, with Isabella's deft hands assembling plates that were as beautiful as they were delicious. Still, the undercurrent of betrayal persisted like a secret ingredient that neither time nor distance could wholly mask. In the interludes of quiet dinner service and the solitude of closed doors, both lovers were forced to confront the inevitable. The knowledge of imminent discovery hovered over every stolen kiss and whispered vow. Inevitably, fate demanded its due. Michelle, whose investigative diligence had evolved into a cunning plan, decided that no longer could she allow these intertwined lives to continue unchecked. One fateful evening, as a cold rain drummed against the windows and the world outside seemed shrouded in melancholy, Michelle chose to confront the specter of betrayal. The moment unfolded not in a burst of explosive anger, but in a deliberate, almost clinical confrontation that was as shocking as it was heartbreaking. With the evidence of quiet meetings and sleepless nights meticulously laid out on the dining table, documents, photographs, and a lingering trace of a familiar scent, Michelle gave Thomas the ultimatum. Her voice, usually calm and tempered by years of professional composure, now trembled with the sorrow of shattered trust and the steely resolve of vengeance. Thomas's eyes filled with regret as the pieces of his fractured life collided. It was as if time had stopped, leaving him suspended in a moment of unbearable truth. The room, filled with the remnants of a sumptuous dinner that Isabella had prepared earlier, now resonated with the sound of a heart breaking. In that charged moment, the roles were reversed. The passionate dalliance that once brought whispered excitement now turned into an inescapable prison of remorse. There was no dramatic shouting match, no flurry of harsh accusations, only a quiet, piercing acknowledgement of betrayal. Michelle, though pained beyond measure, maintained a stoic dignity, her silence more eloquent than any protest. She saw in that tear-filled gaze of Thomas a man who had lost his way, a man who had allowed the forbidden to overrun the sanctity of a partnership built on mutual respect. What followed in the aftermath was a slow, deliberate unraveling of lives that had once seemed irrevocably intertwined. Thomas, isolated by the revelation of his misdeeds, was left to face the stark reality of a love that had grown stale from neglect and dishonesty. Isabella, caught in the crossfire of a passion that had transcended the boundaries of morality, was forced to reevaluate her own worth and the choices that had led her into this labyrinth of deception. Her heart, ever so tender yet resilient, carried the weight of a bittersweet lesson, one that taught her that even in the most vibrant kitchens, where the art of creation mingled with the warmth of love, danger and heartache could simmer quietly beneath the surface. The days turned into weeks, and as the autumn leaves gave way to the frigid whispers of winter, Michelle set forth on her silent crusade for revenge, a journey that was as calculated as it was cathartic. Instead of reclaiming a past shrouded in shadows, she embarked on a mission to rebuild her inner strength piece by piece. Quietly, methodically, Michelle orchestrated her own renaissance. With her professional life as her foundation and determination as her guiding star, she began to reassemble the scattered remnants of her identity. In doing so, she not only ensured that justice would find its way to those who had betrayed her trust, but she also vowed never to relinquish her independence or self-respect. Her social circles expanded, her ambitions soared, and slowly, she began to savor the taste of victory, a victory born not out of vengeance alone, but of self-affirmation. In the midst of this transformative period, Thomas and Isabella found themselves isolated in a world that now felt alien, each having to come to terms with the consequences of their choices. Their once secret passion had grown into a beacon of sorrow, a reminder that the seeds of betrayal, when sown, only bear bitter fruit. The final unraveling was not marked by explosive confrontations or sensationalized scandals, but by a quiet, mutual agreement that it was time to part ways with the ghost of their forbidden liaison. Isabella, with tears shimmering like delicate droplets of dew on a chilly morning, quietly packed her belongings one wintry evening and departed from the house she once transformed into a sanctum of culinary and emotional creativity. Her departure was graceful yet sorrowful, a silent adieu to a chapter of life that, despite its passionate highs, had culminated in irreparable loss. As months passed, the house returned to its semblance of order, although the undercurrent of melancholy lingered like a faint, persistent aftertaste. Michelle, unyielding and resolute, established a new life built on self-reliance and renewed purpose. The once quiet home, steeped in memories of shared meals and shattered dreams, now bore the marks of rebirth, a canvas upon which Michelle painted with bold strokes of independence and conviction. Thomas, forever haunted by his irreversible choices, embarked on a journey of remorse and introspection. In his solitude, he realized that the luxury of routine could hide even the most tumultuous of undercurrents, and that every soul carries the scars of secret transgressions. In the twilight of that turbulent year, the truths long buried found their final expression. The crisp winter air, carrying whispers of redemption and reckoning, bore witness to quiet reconciliations. Michelle's steady resolve blossomed into a new beginning, one that was grounded in wisdom, resilience, and the promise that even the deepest of wounds can mend over time. The tale of the clandestine affair, born in a kitchen where aromas mingled with secrets and betrayal, ultimately became a narrative not solely of passion and revenge, but of profound transformation. It was a story of how hearts, once battered by deceit, could heal, rebuild, and find hope anew in the ashes of what once was. And so, as the seasons continued to turn and the world outside danced to the tune of renewal, the echoes of that fateful affair remained as a timeless reminder. Behind every seemingly ordinary kitchen and every carefully maintained facade, there often lies a hidden story, one of love, betrayal, and the resolute human spirit determined to rise above the darkness in pursuit of a brighter, unburdened tomorrow. In that quiet neighborhood where secrets had once festered, a new chapter had begun, a chapter imbued with the realization that the truest revenge lies not in the destruction of the other, but in the reinvention of oneself, in finding the strength to transform agony into a masterpiece of hope, redemption, and the enduring spark of life. The air remained brisk, but for those who had witnessed the unraveling of this intricate web of passion and deceit, even the coldest winter now held the promise of spring, a quiet vow that every heart, no matter how scarred, can beat anew when given the space to mend and the courage to dream again.